Hi, everyone. We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Hinson.
I'm forever Dr. Donnelly.
And welcome back to our bonus video. We have just finished celebrating Pride Month, but here at Abbey Research, we celebrate Pride all the time, not just in June.
We're a 365-day ally operation over here.
That is right.
Yeah.
So even though we're in July, it doesn't mean we can't talk about Pride issues and LGBTQ plus issues. In fact, it means that we should, because we should be talking about these things all the time because they are human issues.
Yeah.
So for today's bonus video, we're following the chronology of our 4 videos that aired in June and finishing with a summary of narratives about LGBTQ perspectives, particularly a comparison between what TV has been doing recently in the last 10 years and what film has been doing in the last 10 years, and the differences in representation and how narratives and how the diverse rainbow of people that exists in the world are being presented in these spaces.
One of the most persistent criticisms that we hear from both critics and also our queer friends and is that a lot of the art that is produced about a LGBTQ queer experience is the tragic ones, is the sad ones. Like
particularly in film.
Particularly in film. I've got a friend that's like, if I see one more gay woman beat up, like, it's like, if I see one more transphobic attack, like, which is a little bit of how we feel about violence against women in movies, so we can empathize with that a little bit.
And if you think about, we talked about some iconic films, but even the most popular culture ones that happened in the last 20, 30 years, Philadelphia is about AIDS. Milk is about gay rights activism.
And somebody who was killed for it.
And somebody who was killed for gay rights activism. Brokeback Mountain is internalized homophobia.
Played by 2 straight men, which is also a question about representation.
And then now the more recent ones that we talked about at the beginning of our Pride series videos, like kind of iconic gay people. So Freddie Mercury, Elton John. So they tend to be like one of these 4 or 5 stories that we're telling.
Yeah. In versus.
Or coming out stories as well, I should have mentioned, yes.
Yeah, versus, which, by the way, see Love, Simon, if you haven't.
Oh my God, Love, Simon is amazing.
Yeah, please see Love, Simon. Versus a story about a human being who happens to express their sexuality in this way.
Yes.
So like a really great example is we have The L Word on Showtime, which is entirely about very, very specifically about lesbian women, versus Orange is the New Black, which comes along about a decade later, which is about women in prison, some of whom happen to be gay, bi, trans.
Whatever.
Pick a feature.
Yes.
So
the story is about these women and their experiences in prison. Some of them in straight relationships, some of them in gay relationships, some of them not in relationships at all.
Some of them cisgendered, some of them transgendered.
And it is just the cornucopia of human existence, but the centering of that narrative
is not a tragedy.
Is not a tragedy. It is just accepted that this is life.
Yeah.
And that is what we find, I think, a lot from particularly more recent television shows. And we just listed off the top of our head TV shows that we watch now that
thought of it,
that have a gay character that is not,
or a queer character, because I think it's Billions has a gender non-binary.
Oh,
I think it is. I think it's Billions. We'll double check that. Then,
but yes, the whole spectrum is represented.
Yeah,
without being stereotyped.
Yep.
Which a lot of early television
certainly was.
Film,
I mean, think of Will and Grace as a really great example of that.
Yeah, I mean, the gay best friend is a stereotype
for a reason. Sex and the City.
Yes.
Is another one. The gay best friend is another one. But then you fast forward to Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, where the gay best friend trope is turned totally on his head, and Titus Andronicus is the best thing about that show. And so you have what you have, and we'll say this: we, Dr. Hinson, watched an interview with Mindy Kaling.
Yes.
Read an interview with Mindy Kaling.
Watched an interview with Mindy Kaling yesterday.
Where Mindy pretty much said what we've been saying forever, which is when you have a lot of people with different stories around the writing table, it makes it easier for art to tell different stories.
Yes. So a lot of this diversity, I think, that we're seeing, hopefully, in the TV writing room is reflective of an actual diversity, or I should say the diversity we're seeing reflected in TV is a reflection of what's happening in the writers' rooms. I'm not sure. But we're certainly seeing a lot more diversity in terms of storytelling and representation, but also just a normalizing of it, an acceptance of it.
Like, this is life, guys.
that one of the shows that I watched that just ended, Shadowhunters, had a lot of queer representation and varying manifestations of that. But it was a story about people with angel blood who fight demons and werewolves and vampires. And it was
why Dr. Hinson watched it.
It's just a part of the conversation that's who these people were. And it wasn't one of these stories of tragedy or overcoming, an obstacle. It was just life, and life is messy and complicated, and people are messy and complicated. And there's a lot of that happening on TV right now. More recent films are doing a better job of it. A lot of what's coming out of Netflix these days with some of their original stuff, particularly towards a younger audience, I think, a younger demographic, that 18 to 24 demographic. Movies for that age range seem to be normalizing all sorts of gender identities, racial identities, all of that kind of.
And if you also just think about another really good kind of bookend to this conversation is the two versions of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Yeah.
So like the first version of Queer Eye, I think we can all agree that Carson is pretty much a walking stereotype, God love him. And he says that even himself too. And it's very brash, and it played on a lot of stereotypes, and they cast a lot of very heteronormative men who would have never had a gay friend and all that kind of stuff. That was the dynamic of the first show. Come back, it's on Netflix. It's this very gentle human show that everybody I have ever met that watches it cries over it on the regular. And it's just it's a gift of humanity. And like my pastor friends show it to some of their like congregants of like, this is how we do life together.
Yeah.
And there's no stereotypes involved. These are just human beings who happen to be. So just really quick, we are going to really quick cover some other forms of art in a minute, but here's some television shows off the top of our head. Mm-hmm. So clearly Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
Some early fumblings towards this in Glee, which was kind of in a transition point, I think.
Like at the cusp of it. Where we were.
On Freeform, you've got the Fosters. I'm pretty sure most of the DC, any show with Greg Berlanti as part of it is going to have gay characters. Yeah. Brothers and Sisters was clearly a big part of this.
We had Shadowhunters that just ended, but also New Amsterdam, In the Dark are all recent shows. What else is on the list?
She wrote things down. That's why we're looking.
Supergirl, Gentleman Jack, which is on HBO right now.
I don't think so. Supergirl,
Batgirl.
The coming this fall is starring Ruby Rose, and Batgirl is in a lesbian relationship, and there is a lesbian kiss in the trailer, which is not necessarily historic but very significant.
Very big deal. Those are the TV shows that we have currently.
So in other theater, clearly same-sex representation in Broadway and theater has been something that they've potentially been at the forefront a little bit more of than some other stuff, because again, who controls the story controls the product. Mm-hmm. So one of the more famous, of course, is Rent. And that is about people living with and not dying from disease more than anything. But there are certainly, Angel and Collins, and then Joanne and Maureen. Maureen is a bisexual character, was a very big deal, and still is a very big deal to many of my theater friends who identify as bisexual. They talk about Maureen as the thing that helped them realize what they were in a way. So that's comics has been on the contrary to popular belief, comics are really progressive. Yeah. Really progressive. So like for instance, Captain Marvel's been married to Maria for, I don't know, somewhere around 60 years in the comic universe. And when Marvel said a couple weeks ago that a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be gay, pretty much everyone's like, it better be Carol.
It should be Carol Danvers.
Carol Danvers is married to a lady.
For a long time
and
now.
Has never ever been with a gentleman in the Captain Marvel canon. I think Ms. Marvel is different, by the way. Let's not.
There was a Miss Marvel.
Oh, she's Muslim and wearing a hijab. It's incredible. I'll make you read it. I'll get a copy of it. So, I am a novice comic book fan. So there's lots of threads that I don't understand. Also, in romance novels, probably about 10 years ago, we were still treating queer romances as their own kind of genre. And repeatedly over the last couple years, people started realizing that sexuality is not a genre.
What?
God love it.
What?
So male is the absolute like kind of pinnacle of this in romance still. Like some of the best selling are Cat Sebastian. And there's a really, really very famous fantasy male series called by CJ Paskett called King's Landing. That's very famous. lots and lots of hockey romances that are male-male. So there's a lot of normalization of representation in that way too, where clearly romance novels are about your sexuality, but all the good ones are about the human experience. So,
you know, and on top of that as well, lots of fiction and nonfiction as well. YA fiction particularly,
oh my gosh, YA fiction
is doing a great job of this.
And children's books too, like picture books.
Humanizing and normalizing and sharing as many different stories about the human experience as possible. And we've got some links to some lists too, if you're looking for different forms of art to consume that might expose you to these kinds of stories if you haven't already.
And we're always looking for more recommendations for any of the above things. So drop those links if there's things that we've missed. It's also, you should know our brains by now, entirely likely that we are completely in love with the art that you are going to share with us already and completely forgot to mention it.
And it just wasn't on this list of things we wrote down.
Yeah, we are. Yes, again, organized, cyclone of chaos. So that's kind of how we roll. Anyway, guys, happy rest of the year of 2019.
Pride.
May you bring your pride for forever. I always celebrate Pride through August because that's when Belfast's Pride Parade and Pride Festival is. So we'll be sharing some Pride content all the way up through August as well. But we'll be sharing truly human content, regardless of identities, 24/7, 365.
That is what we do.
As long as we are around. So,
but we hope that if you did celebrate Pride, you had a wonderful month of inclusivity and love and kindness, because that is what we wish for everyone. We certainly had a fantastic time celebrating and sharing these stories with you. So please comment, as always, about thoughts and feelings of all the things that we covered. But I think that's all we've got for now. We are the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am forever Dr. Hinson.
I am perpetually Dr. Donnelly.
And we will see you guys next time.